tax day, so everybody should be happy that the tax consequences for all of us are behind us for one more year. A couple of ground rules I want to talk about, folks, before we get going too far is if you got a cell phone, please shut it off. And as we're going along, we have a lot of folks here that need to be at work by 8 o'clock, so I want to have this meeting done by 7:45 at the latest, so we can get people to their normal jobs. That's agreeable with everyone. Looking down at John Weber down there at the end of the bench, I'm thinking maybe do we need to do a few calisthenics to get everybody woke up here? John, are you okay? You think? All right, so we're good to go. And I'm going to officially open the council side of this meeting up, and Kim, I'll let you take over for a second. Why don't you do whatever you need to do?
Okay, so you want me to do that?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're official.
I'm looking for Angie.
Right behind you.
Angie, can you determine if we have a quorum present?
There are 4 trustees present.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to call to order this. I actually did it in the reverse order, but let me get it right. Pursuant to Idaho Code Sections 33506 and 33510, this special meeting of the Moscow School District Board of Trustees.
Okay, so folks, we're officially open, and what I'd like to do, I'm going to start with Wayne Krause here, and we'll go all the way around the room and introduce ourselves and we'll position what it is that we do, because I know some folks, some of the counselors do not know school board members and vice versa. So Wayne, if you'd start off, please.
They'll just introduce me, so now I'm on the city council.
Eric Torak, I'm on the Moscow School Board Trustees.
Tom Lamar, I'm on the Moscow City Council.
Margaret Dibble, School Board.
Gary Reeder, I'm the Moscow City Supervisor.
Deb Adair, District Business Manager.
John Weber, Moscow City Council.
Art Pitke, Moscow City Council.
Jim Frenzel, Trustee.
Dan Carscala, Moscow City Council.
Greg Bailey, Superintendent of the School District.
And I'm Kim Campbell, Trustee.
Very good. Welcome again, everybody, for being here. And thank you, the audience out there that's with us today as well. Thank you for being here so you can listen to what we're saying. Right at this moment, of course, we're talking about the play fields, the ball fields out off of Joseph. I'm going to turn it over to Gary here to give us a synopsis. And Gary, if you would please take over at this moment.
Thank you very much. Just a brief history. As everybody knows, we started this project discussing it back in 1997. Have gone back and forth possibilities for Joseph Street and whether we could possibly place some play fields on that piece of property. A couple of years ago, those discussions started taking shape again, and determined that we could move ahead with the cooperation of both the school district and the city council. And the school district, in fact, we were approached, the city was approached by then Superintendent Dale Kleiner, asking whether the city was still interested in the project. We were. We got an estimate of what it would take to develop the project, some preliminary designs, and the school district at that time put a $10 million, approximately $10 million bond out to the public, of which $1.5 million of that bond was for the development of the Joseph Street ball field, or play fields, excuse me. So, with that, we entered into an agreement for joint development, use, and management of those play fields. The bond was passed, and so then we began to put the crew together, identified a design professional to help us with that, design west from Pullman, and Ned Wernick is here to talk about the process from his involvement through the bidding and where we are today. So Ned, would you like to?
Thank you for having me. I'll be available for questions if I don't manage to cover what most of you already know in this briefing. Beginning in November, we started working with the design planning team, the DPT committee as we called it, and ARC to develop the scope and define what this project would be. We have briefed both bodies at different times through the course of this, and so I don't think much of this has any kind of surprise factor to it. Through the months of November, December, January, February, we worked very hard to put these documents together, trying to beat the bid rush that occurs in the spring. Bidding period was through the month of March, and on April 1st, we opened bids. We had 3 responsive bidders, all 3 from good contractors that we worked with before. The low bidder is Gino Construction out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The low base bid was $2.977 million, which, as compared to our final estimate, which was a bit under $2.6 million, this came, as Greg has been quoted as saying, an unpleasant surprise. That's putting it mildly on my part. Following that up, we worked very hard over the past, I guess it's been 16 days now, looking and working with bidders, subcontractors, suppliers, trying to understand the situation that we found ourselves in. And what we found is we happen to have hit the market at a time when the conditions are not that favorable for us. And it's not something that we think is a blip on the radar. We think this is going to be a long-term step in the construction market in the Moscow-Pullman area, especially in the 2 areas that this project is especially in need of, which is earthwork and landscaping. So looking at it from the perspective of this is not something that's an unusual result or a result that's going to change in some sort of rebid condition, we worked with the bidders and the suppliers and looked at some different things that we could do to reduce the scope, to try to close that budget gap of approximately $400,000 to $450,000. In looking at that, we found revising some product specifications in terms of the infield surfacing and the soil conditioner, providing minor schedule and duration flexibility to the contractor, which won't change the end result of when the fields will be playable or when they will appear to be green grass late this fall, but will give the contractor a little more flexibility in the way that they do the work. And revising the bedding for under drains, the French drains or drain tile, which you might know it as, going from sand to a crushed drain rock provided some savings. Those savings all told, which really don't have any impact on the quality of the project in any sort of way, gets to approximately $190,000 in credit. We did look very carefully at other ways to close the budget gap. We looked at things like deleting the restroom and concession building. We looked at deferring the parking lot. We considered phasing the project and trying to find some scope that would fit within the available budget. And in working with the ARC and the DPT over the past 2 weeks, there's really been a strong sense that the project really needs to go ahead. It needs to go ahead in a scope that is the project that's been imagined from the beginning. And so although we find ourselves at this time with the market conditions in a position where we'd rather not be, that is the fact of the situation right now, and we still have a need for play fields for both the school district and the community. And so with that, I think just reporting and kind of pre-reporting, I think what Gary will share with you next is that both the DPT and the ARC really urged the group to move forward with the scope of this project that was more in line with what the expectations were to begin with. Even if that would mean that we do have to add funding, there was a need for this field, these facilities, and that we shouldn't be left with something that's half done, either phased, rebid, or not quite complete with all the amenities. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it back to Gary to kind of go over the numbers.
Why don't we go through what we've got, Ned, and then I'm sure there'll be some questions. If I can speak from up here. I just want to take a moment, too, and thank the school district and the council for working together on this project. As I said, it's taken a long time, and the community has essentially told us that they want a project like this to occur, and they've certainly been supported both through the support of the school district bond and support of the city council in making these types of decisions. As Ned indicated, when we first started to design this project, the economy started to come back. We saw bids that were far in excess of what we'd expected. However, in looking at a member of the Authorized Representatives Committee, which has 3 members of district representation, including the superintendent, the business manager, and a board member, as well as a city councilman, myself, and Dwight Curtis, our Parks and Rec director on behalf of the city, looked at the project and tried to see what we could do to bring that base bid back in. As Ned indicated, we looked at things as draconian as pulling out the restrooms, you name it, not paving the parking lot, phasing the parking lot in. The city has a regulation that parking lots need to be paved within 5 years of the development, so that would just be deferring some of the cost. As you know, asphalt costs have not been going down, they've been going up, so we would just be trading paving now for some future liability. So the determination was made to see what we could do to try and bring that bid in. So as Ned indicated, he and Bill Belknap, our Community Development Director, had a lot of discussions with the contractor, looking at alternatives to try and find out if there were places where funds could be saved. In addition, the ARC met with the design planning team, which helped develop the scope of the project originally, and it was determined at that time, and the ARC, I think, had already come to this conclusion, that we wanted to have a project that the community could be proud of, that gave the elements that had originally been scoped in the project. So that was something that we looked at, not just cutting, not just trying to find savings, but also how could we get something that we had anticipated that we wanted to do. So the DPT then, as I said, met with the ARC, and we came up with some alternatives that hopefully this board and the City Council will determine will be a good thing to move ahead with. Those alternatives, as I indicated to City Council a couple weeks ago, there are different things that we could have done. We could have deferred the bid, rejected all bids, and gone back out to bid. As Ned indicated, we don't see the construction mini boom, whatever you want to call it, is going to die out in the next year to 18 months. So we can't expect that there will be significant savings by rebidding, but we will lose another season of development of the property if we do that. If we went out to rebid, it'd probably be in October, so we would lose this entire construction season if that were to happen. As you know, we've been talking about this since '97. We've missed a generation of youth at this point. Delaying it any further will just amplify that problem. We looked at were there places to save money. Ned hit on that. We looked at additional funding. As I indicated to City Council a couple of weeks ago, that essentially is the proposal that we've come up with this time. So I will, without further ado, go into that. And I would invite Greg Bailey at any time, who's worked very closely with us, and Deb on this project as equal partners. If you have anything to add, feel free. If I can figure out how to run this.
Wrong red X.
Got it.
You're doing okay so far, Gary.
Now I don't know if I quite know what I'm doing.
I can help you on that.
You may need some joint help here.
Okay, we just have a couple of slides. This is the basic layout as Ned just showed, and this was the design that was forwarded and placed out to bid. I won't spend a lot of time on that because we want to leave a lot of time for the board and the council to have discussions about this. As both Bill and Kim mentioned, this is a regular meeting of both bodies. So after the discussion today, the council and the board, if they so choose, can take action, and we will talk about that a little later, what those actions might be. Okay, this is a proposal that we have put together for council and board consideration. This document it's a fairly busy document. It's been sent out to the board and the City Council. What you have here are the three bidders. These were the engineers or architects' estimates for the project and the different alternatives. This is the base field bid, which we had, as Ned indicated, we had a budget of about $2.6 million for that. It came in, the low bid, apparent low bid was $2.97 million. And then we had 12 alternates. The alternates were set up so that we were sure to get a base product, and then we could add to that as we saw fit. We had hoped, of course, that we would get more competitive bids, and we could pick up each of those alternates as we move on. If you look at those alternates, some of them are pretty basic stuff when you're talking about play fields, dugouts for the baseball and softball fields, soil conditioner, which is an additional way that we make that field more playable. Any of you have been familiar with Oiler Field or any of the other softball, baseball fields around the city. Drainage is a big issue in Moscow. We have clay-type soils. So what we wanted to do on this project is make sure that that field was playable as long as possible, and that means putting in drainage systems as well as soil amendments to help that. A storage building. Storage building was for the placement of equipment. Some of the users would be able to store some of their equipment there to try and give it less of a cluttered effect, make it more user-friendly. Bleachers was something that was not in the base bid, but for some school district regulations, Greg knows about the playing regulations, you have to have places for spectators for competitive sports. The other one that is included here, and if you look over here, you'll see a number 1. Wherever you see a number 1 in this proposal, that would be funded under this proposal. A 0 means that it is not funded under this proposal. So the last thing that is included under this proposal is the east pedestrian path. This circumvents the east and north side of the fields, hooks into the Paradise Path at Carroll Rivalry Brink Park, provides some access to some of the other, at least the east or northernmost ball field. So those were included in this proposal. The other things that are not included, you'll see, are scoreboards, and the scoreboards were bid at the alternate from Gino Construction was $113. It was determined that if there is savings in the contingency, that those might be able to be picked up at a later time. Gino has indicated that they would hold that bid price open if we did decide to exercise that at a later time, or we could do something else. It's also an opportunity, if it becomes necessary. It's something that can be parsed out discreetly, and we could receive community help for that through the ball clubs, civic organizations, so on and so forth. Also, we have benches and banner poles. This was to assist with identification for pickup points, drop-offs for children using the facility. We've integrated that, we believe, into the public art component of this project, which will be funded through our public art fund. Council's already talked about preliminary discussions there. The superintendent and I have had discussions about integrating art and the work of students in that, because this is a student-driven facility as well. The last 4, Concrete Plaza is an extension. Parking lot removal, that was just an option whether we took the parking lot asphalt out and went over the whole thing, or whether we overlaid it. Lighting was something that we wanted to put conduit in if it was ever decided to put lighting in later. It was a fairly expensive alternate, something that can be added later. Conduit will be placed underneath the hard surfaces, so should that lighting ever be added later, we won't have to tear up any asphalt or concrete. It'll already be there. And lastly, sump pump, which isn't a big alternate for some of the drainage and stormwater issues. So with that, what does that mean? Well, that comes to, with those alternates, it comes to $3,292,500. The deductive options, alternates that have been discussed with Ned and Bill and preliminarily with General Construction amount to about $190,000. Our contingency, which is right below here, was originally just over $200,000 at a 7% contingency. That can be trimmed to 5%. These bids were close enough that our architecture folks and Bill feel that we should be able to make do with a 5% contingency. So there's a little bit of savings there. Materials testing is something we added in. That was to make sure that the drainage issues on the field are addressed well, and we wanted to make sure that we could validate that. So we have a professional proposed to test that. That brings the total project cost to $3,275,415. We have available $2,782,726, leaving a deficit of $492,689. Okay, what do we do with that? We've had discussions. I met with the mayor, council leadership, about what would be a fair way for the city to participate in this project. It is a community project. It does have educational elements. We appreciate the school district's willingness to participate. And I would note, for the edification of those folks who haven't been privy to this entire agreement, that we have a term for our joint use agreement of 30 years, that during that 30-year period, the school district and the city will equally share the maintenance cost of the facility, and the operations and administration will be provided by the city. It will be used for both community purposes as well as school district purposes, with priority being given to the school district purposes under the agreement. Okay, there are things that, as good guardians of the public dollar, as the council and the school district trustees are, we looked at, if we were going to make this happen, what would make that palatable to the city? With a 30-year lease, we would like to see an extension of that. We would like to go from 30 years to 50 years, and the value of that, along with some other things, would raise the value of our participation in the project. So what you see is city funding, and I'm sorry, that 33% this should be 75 and that should be 25. I'm sorry about that.
The pages are correct, though.
That's right there.
Notice you picked that up.
That should say 25 and that should say 75. I only read this about 24 times. Of course, I probably got about 5 versions of it. So if you take that deficit, 75% of that, if the city were to fund that additional, that would add $369,516.75 to the city's obligation, which they've already made for $1.5 million, which would bring the total to $1,869,516.75. Okay, in recognition of the school district's obligations of already putting in $1.5 million to match the city's original obligation of $1.5 million, and in recognition that the city or the district is in the middle of remodeling some of their educational facilities as well, that the obligation to the district could be less than that of the city in order to make this happen in a fashion that gives the community the project that they wanted. So we applied a 25% factor to the overage for school district purposes. So that would be an amount of $123,172.25, this number right here, and add that to the original $1.5 million, so the total obligation to the district would be $1.623,172.25. If both of our boards were to agree to that, we could move ahead with the project, and we are prepared to provide the wherewithal for you to do that today should you see fit after you have a discussion. So the idea is to make this happen, to bring the project in where we wanted to bring it in. This makes perfect sense. The city at one time, we've been looking for play fields and ball fields for a long time. It is an advantage to us to have those fields in a fairly central location. It makes sense for the school district, for their educational purposes, to have access to those fields, to allow the city to operate and maintain those fields, and essentially minimize the school district's participation in keeping those fields playable for educational purposes as well. And as I indicated, the council and the city does recognize that there are obligations that the school district has in trying to renovate as much of your educational facilities as you can under the bond that was passed, and that consideration we hope that we've done by the city offering to shoulder 75% of the overage cost on this. We would like, as I indicated, as part of the consideration for this, we would like to extend that original term from 30 years to 50 years. So with that, I'd invite the superintendent to make any comments he has, and then we'd like to open it up for discussion, and then after you've discussed it, you can give staff direction as to how you'd like to proceed.
Well, I'm going to be short on this because what Gary said is completely something that we have talked about and worked together on. So a lot of it is ditto. This has kind of been a perfect storm. in a way. I know the people are happy of what's happening in the economy, that it's raising, but for an agency like ourselves, it hasn't been as nice because the bids weren't as low as what we were hoping. So the costs have increased in all of our projects, as well as the timing. We're trying to do this job. We've been asked to do it at a quick pace so that our kids can get onto the playing field. The other thing is the perspective. We have to look at the perspective of what our community will see when this project is over. We don't want to, we actually even had a conversation of bringing in porta potties and things like that, and we felt like with a project like this and having porta potties out there would probably not be something that the community would be very happy with. So we sat down, Mr. Reedner, Mr. Belknap, and others, city employees, and worked really hard and diligently to find a solution to this. We also had our representatives from a lot of our organizations join us on this. We're looking at a recommendation that we feel will meet the needs of what our community is expecting. It's an additional amount of money and we're concerned about that, as probably everyone is. However, I look at this and realize that in a few of our other areas we were able to save some money in our extracurricular activities projects to be able to pay our share of this. So my recommendation would be to follow suit in this and move forward.
If I can make one more comment. One of the things for city council perspective, the $1.5 million that had originally been budgeted for this project was taken from our Hamilton funds, which was part of a bequest for recreational uses by the Parks and Recreation Department. The additional would also come from that fund. The balance of that fund after the original $1.5 million is approximately $3.3 million. If the council were to approve this additional, then that would take that, the aggregate amount of that fund, the accumulation, down just below $3 million. And of course, under council policy, the earnings on that fund help offset the costs of the Hamilton Indoor Recreation facility as well.
Okay, with that, I have a couple of comments, but I'm going to open it up because we're going to let everybody get a chance here to talk. But I want to say back in 1993 when the school purchased that property, there was a fellow chair of the board, a guy by the name of Matt Graves. I'll never forget this. Him and I had a conversation. He said, we finally got lands for a ball field, and that was in 1993, and I had this vision in my head that that's terrific. In 5 years, we're going to have this terrific field and ball fields, and here we are, folks, 21 years later. I mean, this is something we've been talking about in this community for a couple of decades. And as I see it, folks, and look, when I was down there when the bidding was opened up, and we've seen what it was, and everybody at this table here has had a little bit of a stomachache chewing on this and trying to work through this process. And it doesn't come lightly for any of us, and everybody has done a wonderful job of really digging in and making things work to make this thing a reality for our community. And it's a win-win situation, in my view, for the city as well as the school district. And so I just wanted to share that information with you and the public so they know that there is a lot of work, hard work about it. And sometimes we have to make tough decisions that we don't particularly care to do, but it's one of those things, if we do it, doing it for the right reason. Okay, folks, with that, I'll open it up. Who would like to go? Talk first.
I actually would like to. I would like to hear from Deb, if I could, because we passed the bond for a limited amount of money, and we actually all realize that we have many, many more needs in the school district than what this money will pay for. But with the money that we have, we had a budget allocated to certain facilities, and we're nearing the end of that bidding process now, but there's still a couple things out there that we haven't bid on yet, I think, right? Windows?
That's correct. Tomorrow we'll open window bids and a boiler bid.
And a boiler bid, all right. And so what happens now that we're nearing the end is that even though we might have come in with low bids on some things, we have high bids on a couple other things, and so we have to figure out how to allocate that money to get everything we need. And as I said at the ARCS meeting, we get to the point where we're trying to decide between building a dugout and building a special education bathroom. And those are the decisions we're trying to make as trustees. So I'd like to hear from you in terms of how you think this money will, if this amount of money can be freed up for this.
I appreciate your statement, and it's true. We have a finite bucket of money for our bond projects, and some of our bids have come in high. And we've also made some adjustments because of other circumstances. For example, the Russell roof replacement. So we had that in the budget and in the bond replacement budget, and that roof doesn't need to be replaced now because it didn't deteriorate at the rate that we thought it might 3 years ago. It still has 5 years left, so that freed up a bucket of money. Another thing that happened was that when we initially pulled together, the long-range planning task force pulled together ideas on how we wanted to spend these bond dollars. So we had $500,000 that we were going to use to renovate the outside lockers. And instead, we decided to build beautiful new lockers in the bear den and not build the outside lockers. Another thing that happened is that we are disabling the boiler that we were going to replace in the high school annex, and part of the science lab renovations that are going in that section of the high school will have a heating system in it. So that increased the cost of the science lab renovation, but it was an offset, so it was less. I feel that the way that the bids came in, maintaining a contingency for our projects, looking at conservative numbers for what we want to do, including those ad alternates that you referred to, such as a special ed restroom in the middle school, that we can swing it.
Okay.
Can that contingency be used for other projects, or is that one right there on that sheet, can it be used for all the bond projects or just that?
That contingency that's built in there is for the playfields.
Okay.
But if we don't spend it on playfields, then we have...
Well, half of it, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
And I should know the answer to this, but is the press box somewhere else? Is that in the classroom?
It's
renovation?
within the Bear Den
Yes.
project.
So it's in the base bid
Okay.
So it's in
of the blue stuff on top.
Right, okay.
Okay. Counselors, we heard from John.
Well, I actually, like everyone here, am not in favor of the dollars, but very much in favor of the project. I can remember in the late 50s playing ball on Gormley Field, and that was about the only place you could play ball in Moscow for Little League and whatever. And then it transformed into, we lost that field, and a couple of softball fields came in, some tennis courts came in. And over the years, we have made use of the fields that we have, both for the city and for the school district, to the point where there's no more use to be gotten out of them. They are full. This particular project, to me, is just moving along, although, like Bill said, it's a little short as far as time goes. Maybe this should have been done 20 years ago, but it wasn't. We have a chance to do it now, even though none of us likes the dollar figure. But if you take a look at the extra, essentially $500,000, and you spread that over a 30 to 50 year period, it's not that much. And I don't think that we will be able to get a bid this low if we go next year, the year after, or the year after. I think those bids are going to do nothing and which is going to leave us in the same position of spending more money and still not having ball fields. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to swallow the bitter pill of spending another essentially $370,000 of the city or the Hamilton Low Fund and $123,000 of the school district budget and move ahead with this project.
Dan is our acting president of the council. He's a vice president. Walter Steed's on vacation.
Yeah, Gary said it, I think, best when he went through it. We've missed a generation of kids that were playing soccer and baseball and lacrosse, or all the things that the design planning team got together and kind of tried to incorporate into the process there. My kids have gone past being able to do it. A lot of people, but I know Eric's kids will hopefully see the benefit of this happening. And as a patron of the school district, I urge the board to move forward. As a city council member, I think that have a consensus that we'd like to move forward on our end. And if we can get this done in the time we get, I at least have a couple nephews and nieces that will still be able to benefit from the use of this field. So I just look forward to our school district students being able to participate in activities on this field. Look forward to seeing those things busy all summer long. I can't wait to cut a ribbon in September of 15, and I hope everybody here will be there to do it with us. I just can't see a better time to do it. As John and I talked the other day, and he met with a contractor friend of his that says, hey, it's not getting cheaper to do this dirt work. And when Gary and I first talked about it, it was like it's all dirt work that's costing this much money. But for lack of a better term, the contractors aren't hungry right now like they had been in the past couple of years. We're on the upswing, which is good in general for the economy, but it's hard for us when we're trying to build things, especially in the public sector.
Okay, Tom?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I wanted to just thank the city staff and the school board or school district staff for moving in the last few weeks from shock and opening those bids to putting together a very functional, useful proposal to move forward and to get us off this long 2 decades of thinking about this project and actually getting us a proposal that we can work with and make happen. I agree with the others who have spoken that it's unfortunate that we have to put more money into it at this point, but I also agree with everybody who's spoken so far that this is the time to get it done and to make it happen and to move it forward. The sooner we can get this thing built, the better.
Wayne?
A couple of weeks ago, I had lunch with one of the Pullman City Council members. We were visiting about a variety of things, and the subject of bonding came up and how now we can't seem to meet the engineers' estimates, where previously they were coming in below the engineers' estimates. And Pullman actually has a large project that they want to put out for bid, but they're going to defer that for a year in hoping that
it's going to become less. And he and I both agreed that it's probably not going to get less. There is so much work out there right now, and if we could have done this a year ago, we probably could have came in at the right figures where we're at. But now it is what it is. The Hamilton Low funds, which were gifted to the city for youth recreation, is what built Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center. I personally hate spending the principal, because once that fund is gone, it's gone. And I would much prefer to be able to utilize the interest. But right now, the interest isn't all that great either. And so this has been 20 years in the working. And so I guess the question is, if not now, when? And so I'm willing to spend another $500,000 or $370,000 in principal out of the Hamilton Low Fund, which will never come back again, because I think this is a hugely popular and necessary project. And I think it's a fantastic thing that the City of Moscow and the school board has been able to bond together and do this as a partnership. And I feel very confident that we'll move forward with this, that this will happen on the time schedule that we have been hoping for, and that this will also lay groundwork for future possible partnering projects between the city and the school district. So I wholeheartedly support this, and certainly encourage the school board to move forward with their additional $123,000 commitment, as well as extending the lease period to the 50 years from the 30-year period.
Art, we haven't heard from you yet.
Anything I could say at this point would be strictly redundant, because I agree with everything that's been said. I regret somewhat the loss of the principal from the Hamilton Low Fund that supports the operation of the HERC, and we'll have to figure out what to do with the loss of income there. But otherwise, I think the use of the monies in that fund are very much for the recreation and the benefit of the youth of Moscow, and this is a very appropriate project for that. And so I would support the project, because I am right behind it, but reluctant to spend the money, but it's something that we need to do, and any postponement would just be kicking the can down the road, and we would still be needing ball fields in the future.
You know, one of the things, this is, for the last 2 weeks, this has been, for lack of a better term, gut-wrenching for all of us sitting at this table, whether you're a school board member, or whether you're a city council, or whether you're the mayor, or the superintendent of the school district, or the city supervisor. It's tough on all of us, and some of these decisions we have to make. And going forward, you know, if you look at the bond thing and what interest rates are making us, and it's really terrible, as everybody in this room knows. If you take that money and you take it over an extended period of time, you're talking about today's dollars, and what would that be worth in 30 years from now? You know, even though this puts the pressure on all of us, and guess what? We're all in leadership roles, and that's why we were elected and selected to be in leadership roles, is because sometimes we have to make the tough decisions, and that's the way life goes, and so we have to do this. But I'm telling you, folks, and I think 20 years from now, a couple of decades from now, when none of us are probably in the positions that we're in currently, somebody will say, you know what, those folks collaboratively made some good decisions, even though it's tough right now. And look, none of us, if we walk out of this room today and there's something we didn't get, well, guess what? Then we probably had a win-win situation. That's how I see it, folks. And I'd like to hear more from the school board, Ken, on their thoughts. Jim or Margaret?
No, I think everybody has worked very hard on this project. I think you've done everything you can to get the costs down. What troubles me a great deal is I hear a lot of talk about ball fields and recreation. I'm not hearing a whole lot of talk about education. I think, yes, well, I don't know, maybe the city doesn't need ball fields. I'm not a ball player myself, but certainly enough people have told me that. But what is bothering me is it is not the mission of the Moscow School District to provide recreational facilities for the city of Moscow. And I rather wish sometimes that the civic pride would extend to replacing these mobile units, temporary shelters we have at West Park, Russell, and McDonald School. Are there more? And I've certainly got a fair bit of grief about the amount of money that this bond was putting into sports facilities, both the ball fields and the Bear Den. That's a huge chunk of money going to sports. And that's not our mission. And whatever we do, of course, we're going to get a lot of grief.
Well,
from somebody.
Well, Margaret, that's why we're in leadership roles. So
I'd like to tag on to what Margaret said, because early on you mentioned the previous school board member who said now we've got ball fields when we bought the land, but that land wasn't bought as ball field. It's big enough to put ball fields on. It was bought to build a school on. And we have that in the agreement, but I just wanted to make it clear, again, I think all of us know it, that the district has always looked at that land as another school site, with the idea that it was large enough that we could do additional recreation on it. And so I've supported this project because I think it does preserve that school site for us and allows for the additional recreation. But we didn't buy it solely for ball fields. That wouldn't be a decision we would make. So.
Jim?
Well, let's see. I would also like to thank everyone for their hard work and their spirit of cooperation. It's been a good group to work with. I do also agree that the district is in the business of education. And while there is a huge need in the community and a huge desire for additional play fields, in my personal opinion, the school district has adequate play space. We own a football field, a track, tennis courts, 2 soccer fields, baseball field, you name it. And so at the moment, I don't see that as our biggest need. And yet 30% of $10.8 million was allocated to athletics. And that's not what appears in the Constitution. So that's my general sense. But I think we struck, I was not as well prepared. I think we struck a delicate balance between trying to cooperate and meet the needs of the community, at the same time gather community support for renovation of our facilities. And
Tom?
I wanted to throw out another piece, is that, I never have been a big Little League player, baseball player, football player, soccer, all those, sports. When I wanted to go play with my buddies, we just picked up a ball and went to whatever mowed piece of grass there was, and we didn't have to have
Why can't they play in the street like that?
I don't know why the kids don't play in the street like I did. I walked to school both ways, uphill. But I think the real benefit to Moscow of this facility is having a very centralized location where kids can get out and play. And I think that we all know that we in this country have an increased need for kids to be active and have access to places where they can be active and be safe and build their brains and their bodies so that they can be better learners, or have the opportunity to be better learners. I think that we know that kids who get exposure to the outside, who visit nature centers or play ball or run on tracks or be active, are better citizens, are better educated people. I think we're really helping the people of Moscow by doing this, more than just having a place to sign up on your Babe Ruth League or playing soccer, playing football, or whatever those specific sports are. I think it's the right thing to do, and even though it feels like we're going off the central focus of education, perhaps, I do think that it's a really good thing for all of us. And this is the second time I've spent a lot of time on this particular piece of property. A bunch of years ago, in my other role with PCEI, I worked with the school district to help work on that north side of this property. And we delivered, the night before the school district decision on that, we delivered pie boxes with the layout of that property to show how the property could host all of these different uses, including the improved stream, the nature park, ball fields, and someday future school. So I still believe that we have those possibilities with this particular project.
I'd like to go to Eric. Eric wants to say something or something.
I'd like to start with another question.
Okay.
Sorry, Deb, for you.
Sorry.
Back on contingency. Contingency for all the other bond projects outside
Yes.
of the playfields. What is that value now?
For most of our projects, it's at 8%. For roofs and windows, it's at 5%.
Okay. And the money that we're moving over, is it coming from that those two contingencies?
It would come from projects we are not doing.
The project that you mentioned earlier that we're not
Yes.
doing, okay. All right. All right. You know, personally, I support the project. I think it meets the mission of the school district in the respect of what Tom's saying. Looking long-term, we're preserving our need or potential need for a new school at that location, and I think contributing to the long-term vision of the city along with the school district.
Gary, you had a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, certainly, I can understand the discussion that perhaps this doesn't fit squarely into an educational mission of the school district. However, we have a long history of collaboration between the city and the school district. Our Let's Move initiative was a collaboration initiated by the city, involved the school district, involved issues of healthy eating, active living, ways to try and make our young people, give them opportunities to get in better health, because it does make them better students. You go back to the DARE programs and those sorts of things, school resource officers. All things that are ancillary to maybe the educational mission, but assist in you achieving the environment that you can provide a more quality education to students who are in a better position to learn. So this is just one in the many series of things that we've done in the past and will continue to do in the future.
Wayne, I want to get let Wayne through it, then I'll come back to you, Greg, here in a second.
Take my city council hat off, and I'll speak as a taxpayer, not only within the city of Moscow, but the Moscow School District. I graduated from Moscow High School. Both our sons graduated from Moscow High School. And, Jim, you made the comment that you think that the school district has enough athletic fields right now, but what about 30 years down the road? This is not just for today. This is for the future. This is for a long-term investment on down the road. And Margaret, I agree with you in the fact, and Jim too, that the school board's primary task is education. There's no question about that. But I challenge you in the fact that buildings are not just the only form of education. That's not where education necessarily happens 100% of the time. Athletics is an important part of education also, because it teaches a person about their persona. It teaches them about how to win gracefully and how to lose gracefully. It teaches them about themselves. It builds strength. It builds character. And this is a very important part of the educational process. I know that we're all concerned about where athletics is going today. We take a look at the amount of money that's in professional sports. And now we're talking about in the upper levels in the NCAA that they're going to start paying college kids to play ball. I hope not. But let's get away from that. Let's get back down to the grassroots. Let's get back down to the local level. And what is the importance of athletics within the school district? And I maintain that it is, Margaret and Jim, part of the educational process also.
Greg?
I guess I look at this as, this was a project that was voted on by a large majority of our population. And they wanted projects completed. The other thing, so I think we need to move forward on this. The other thing that I look at is, last night we sat in a meeting, the mayor did, Gary, and a few other people, representatives from throughout the district to talk about, alcohol use for college students, but actually awareness and the use at the high school and junior high levels too. This is one of the things that you can use to prevent that, to keep kids busy. I find that a kid that's busy doesn't do these other things as much. So, I look at this that way. The other thing I look at is I never use the term extracurricular. I use co-curricular because I see it as a part of our program. We have PE programs, we have physical fitness, we talk about health, we talk about all these things that we want for our students to be healthy, because a healthy body is a healthy mind. And the other thing I look at is we're designing a program that put in grass, put in parking lots, and so forth. At someday we will want to put a school there. We have that footprint there. That's going to come. When we do that, we already have the grass in. We already have a parking lot in. So that's going to help us in that project. It's going to cost a lot less when we build a school there than if we started from scratch. So I still support this program.
Thank you, Greg. John, did you have a comment? It looked like you were wanting to make that.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion if we've had enough discussion.
Margaret?
Okay, was it 9 years ago? We tried to pass a bond to build a new school,
The high school.
renovate schools, and we had a joint meeting like this, somewhat like the city council. Different city council.
But you were the only one that's still there.
Yeah, Dawn was there, but she's not here. I know. It's a whole different crowd of people. But at some point, somebody in the city looked at the school board and said, "You're just like any other developer." Well, the hell we are. And I hope for a better attitude from people in the city if we go ahead with this project. It's this cooperation. It needs to come from both sides. And, since I got through high school before Title IX, I have no character.
I'm there with you, Margaret.
Yeah, so, in spite of my reservations, I do think this would be a very good thing for the city. And, school boards come and go. So, I'd like to make a motion.
That's the order.
What is your...
What do we now?
She can do it.
Yes, she can do it.
This is my meeting.
Her meeting too.
I mean, we have two meetings here.
She makes a motion, the school board votes on it, not counselors, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go get a cup of coffee.
It's a very long motion, yeah. So, I will move that the Board of Trustees of Moscow School District Number 281 hereby approve the apparent responsive low bid of Gino Construction, approve the negotiation of a contract with Gino Construction to construct the base project plus recommended alternates, dugouts, additional soil conditioner, storage building, bleachers, and east pedestrian path. Approve the transfer of $123,172, I already paid the quarter, for the Moscow School District Community Playfield Project from other allocated funds deemed as saving within the bond project. And approve amendments to the agreement for the joint development, use, maintenance, and administration of Moscow School District property at Joseph Street to reflect the additional funding obligations of the parties and to extend the term of agreement from 30 to 50 years. Is there anything more I need to put in there? Eric, Jim?
I don't think so.
I think
Is that good?
we'll need a second.
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? additional discussion?
Well, while I'm a big fan of community play fields, and I've always voted for all recreational opportunities in the city, compared to Palouse River Drive, this is a steal for $2 million to the city. And we are not that wealthy, the district. That's my only comment.
Is that for or against?
You're going to interpret it as you see that. I suppose it depends on your perspective.
Yes.
We didn't discuss the lengthening of the joint use agreement. Yeah, we did.
It was
Well, I mean, I know it's in the...
We have not, you're right.
We
We have
haven't
not discussed
at all.
it.
Is there any discussion along those
Well-
lines?
What would have been the alternate? I mean, if
Well,
we would have stopped
30.
at 30, what would we have done?
Yeah. Well, my feeling is that once those fields get built, they will be there forever. Nobody will remember 30 years from now, 50 years from now. You know, I'd only be 113. It's possible, but not probable.
I'll be 95, so I'll remember my wife.
Some of you young people may see the, have to negotiate the change there. To me, it's kind of a moot point.
Me and Eric will remind you.
Any additional comments? I think we're ready to vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
Nay.
So the motion passes 3-1, and I'll turn it back over to Denny.
Council?
John?
John, for a motion
Written? John was going to write one, or read one.
John?
I didn't, I'll just come up with one. Actually, I would move that we approve the removal of $369,517 to pick up the quarter from the Hamilton Low Fund and to put it into the construction of the Joseph Street ball fields, and that we also include...
Excuse me, did you mean the Moscow School District Community Playfields?
Well, that's what I meant, but I think we all know that from now until forever, they're going to be called the Joseph Street ball fields.
MSDCPF.
But you're right, Marty, you're right. The correct terminology should be put in there, not something else. And that the term of the agreement, as far as the maintenance of the fields go, from 30 to 50 years.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by John Weber and a second by, hang on a second, a second by Tom. Stephanie, did you get that down, the wording on that correct? Okay. Gary?
Yeah, one of the other things that our joint agreement requires is that we approve the contract recommendation to the school board. Now, they've already done it, but our contract does call for that.
I'll amend the motion then to include the approval of the contract upon the school district's approval, which they already did.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, and John, so we got an amendment to
Well, it's easier
that.
if we just agree to it and then vote on it. But
Yeah, either way.
It's done, it's proper. So we made an amendment, motion by Dan and a second by John, and I will start the voting with Wayne.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, we had to kind of look around because we had folks in, so that passed 5-0, so
That's
let's...
on the amendment. so-
Right, yep,
On the amendment.
that's on the amendment. Now we'll go on the motion.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that passes 5-0. Seems to me, folks, we've made a deal collectively, and I want to address Margaret here for a minute. Two things, Margaret, that you, and I'm fully believing in this with this council, certainly from this mayor, is that we work collaboratively, whether it's a community, whether it's the University of Idaho, whether it's a city, whether it's a Chamber of Commerce. And that is something with me, folks, it's in cement, because guess what? It's a win-win situation for our community when we do that. I'm very much in favor of education. I voted for every single bond that's ever gone through, and I will continue that. Hopefully, Margaret, like you, 50 years from now, I'm going to be 113, and I hope I get a vote yes on a number of these things.
You know, I just got tingles that this happened.
Well, you know, folks...
You got a drawer full of cash.
We've accomplished a lot. I think it's terrific for our community, and this is what collaboration is all about.
No, I'd agree. I've just been here for a few months, but I'll tell you, working with the city, with Mr. Riedner and crew, it's been enjoyable. I can see how this has helped all of our community, our students, and I'm excited. I don't have tingles.
No, tingle, yeah.
I do think, too, that in the agreement, the ARCS Committee is established, which stands for, I can't remember.
Authorized Representative
Committee, right. And I kind of hope that through the work on that committee with focus mostly on this Playfields project, but we have the opportunity to discuss other potential projects where we can work together, and I think that's a very important
Because we have
venue.
We have a lot more to do.
Yeah, we have a lot more to do.
This bond that we passed a year ago was, well, pathetic, really pathetic, and I hope that things will, improve, and that we show our civic pride in other things as well.
Gary, did you have anything you wanted to
Yeah, I just
add?
want to say, I've been in this position since 1993 when that property was first purchased, and I'm just very pleased that the council and the school board has come together on this project. And as Greg indicated, there are other issues that need to be dealt with, and I think the collaboration and the cooperation between the district and the city will help the community move forward as a whole.
Congratulations.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
I'm going to get it out
I'm
of the
going
floor.
to adjourn the school board meeting as of now.
And I am going to adjourn the council meeting as such, too. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.